Welcome back to the Print 3D channel. Today is January 2nd of 2017, and that means day 2 of the 3DP 365 project. On this episode, I'm going to give my full review of the Crystal Series Filament from MakerGeeks, so stick around. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me here on day 2 of the 3DP 365 project. If you're new to the channel or unfamiliar with 365 projects, check out episode 1, and in the description, I created a little fact section so you can find out more information. But for today's episode, we're going to check out Crystal Series Filament from MakerGeeks. This filament arrives in the December 3D Geek Box, and this is a subscription service, and I'll put the link down in the description below so you can check that out. And the December box was sent to me at no cost, just for review purposes only. And I want to clarify that so there's no bias on this review. So let's get started. If you watched my unboxing video of the 3D Geek Box, then you saw that the filament arrived in each one of its own Ziploc bags sealed nicely with the desiccant bag inside. And that's pretty cool. I've never had a filament arrive in its own Ziploc bag. In fact, they give you an extra bag just in case you tear yours during opening or if you have some filament samples you'd like to store. Let's talk about the filament itself. For diameter, I did 5 measurements at a 3-foot length, and the average came out to 1.75. And that's pretty impressive, and I think this is a very consistent filament. The texture of the filament is quite smooth. In fact, it's a lot smoother than some of the other translucent filaments I've used before. Now let's give it the bend test. As you can see, it took quite a few bends just to get it to break, and it really didn't break. I kind of had to tear it a little bit. And using my clippers, it was more of a soft cut and not a snap cut like some filaments can be. And as you can see, the filament is semi-translucent, and it has a bit of a sheen to it, almost a gold tone. And now on to the test prints. Of course, the first thing I printed was the benchy. And to be honest, it turned out pretty good. There were some issues with the smokestack, and I did notice that on flat surfaces, this filament does have a tendency to get a little bit crystallized. But it's okay. I think this turned out pretty awesome, and I'm really happy with this. Next up was the tree frog, part of my standard tool set when it comes to testing filament. And don't forget, I'll put a lot of close-ups in at the end so you can see these prints up close. But this guy turned out amazing. I am really happy with this print. There was a little bit of stringing because I am in the testing phases, and because this filament runs at 230 degrees, you really do need a lot of cooling. But either way, this guy turned out awesome. And this is one of the really tough prints to get because it's got a really steep overhang on the belly, which could cause some curling. But this guy turned out flawless. Next up is the Lion in HD. And again, this is another one of my standard tool set models to print for testing filament. And this guy turned out amazing. I really love the way this guy looked. And there's a bit of a gold sheen to the filament too, so that's really cool. This guy turned out awesome. I'm really happy with this print. Next up was Jonah the Fishmonger. This is from the MakerBot collection of small figures. And I love printing these little guys because they have a ton of little detail, and there's always some tricky overhangs that may have to print. But this guy turned out stellar. I love the way Jonah looks. He's really cool. I love his little fish, and for a tiny little figure, there's a lot of little detail that the printer picked up, and with this filament, he looks really cool. And of course, we print the Bob-Omb model from ChaosCoreTech. This is again one of my staple models for testing filament. Because of all the detail that ChaosCoreTech put into this model, it's worth using every time I test filament. And he turned out amazing. There was a little trouble with the wick. Again, we're running at 230 degrees, so you need a lot of cooling for this kind of filament. And when you're doing small areas, you should really slow your printer down because at that point, the filament is really just molten plastic. But either way, he turned out awesome, and I love the look of this little Bob-Omb model. And of course, we printed out the 3D Geek Box December model of the month, which is Christmas themed. And this is a little light cover for your string of lights. And this guy turned out amazing. I am really happy with this. The gold sheen really adds a lot to it. And of course, we printed one in red. And the red one turned out amazing too. I am really happy with this translucent filament. I think this looks really cool. And finally, I printed another benchy in the red color that they sent us in the 3D Geek Box. And I didn't set up a multiple process to slow down and add more cooling for the smokestack. I thought my settings were pretty good, but it still got a little bit molten on the top. It still requires a little tweaking, but all in all, the filament worked out amazing. So in my opinion, I think the Crystal Series filament is better suited for printing out things like light covers, or vases, or things that can really utilize the translucent capabilities of the filament. Printing out small models and toys really doesn't utilize the filament's purpose. It's translucent, and you should utilize that aspect. So to summarize, I would highly recommend the Crystal Series filament from MakerGeeks. This filament is awesome. I think it has a very limited use. I don't think you would use this in general use for model printing or parts printing, but if you're printing vases or lights or any other kind of art project, this is the filament for you. The color is very consistent. What you see on the roll is what prints. Even though it runs at a very high temperature, if you're using a lot of cooling, you shouldn't have any problems. The diameter of the filament averaged out to a 1.75, so that's pretty great. The filament is very flexible. It's not dried out like some filaments, and when you snap cut it, you get a nice soft cut and it doesn't crack. And it comes in its own storage bag with a desiccant bag inside. And that's a Ziploc bag, so that'll keep your filament nice and dry. The selection of colors that MakerGeeks has is pretty limited, but these are translucent filaments, and I know the color is hard to achieve with the translucent effect. And also, which is really cool, MakerGeeks offers bulk pricing, and I haven't seen that on a lot of the filament websites. Depending on how much filament you want, you could only spend up to $18 a roll, but that's ordering 12 or more rolls. On the average, your roll will cost about $24 to $25 of the Crystal Series filament, and that's a really good price for a translucent filament. And they do offer free shipping on all orders. I don't know if that's international, but here in the United States, that's a huge plus. So thank you for joining me here on day 2 of the 3DP 365 project. I hope you found this informative, and it'll help you make a more educated decision when it comes to purchasing your filament. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share those videos, and join me again here tomorrow on the very next episode of the 3DP 365 project. I really love this filament, and I can see printing out a lot of really cool art projects with it.